Welcome to The Chat. Come behind the inbound scenes of some of the world's fastest growing companies. For the past 10 years as Chatmetrics, we've had an exclusive inside view of how these industry leaders are revolutionising inbound marketing and sales across diverse sectors. Each week, we bring you conversations with top minds in marketing and sales who share insider secrets and strategies for driving inbound success. Join us on The Chat, your front row seat to the future of inbound. Today on The Chat, we're joined by Erik Charles, a startup advisor, fractional CMO, CRO, and one of the sharpest minds in go-to-market strategy and sales performance. He's helped scale teams across continents, fine-tune comp plans that actually drive behaviour, and now he's deep in the world of agentic AI. Humans and hallucinating machines are trying to work side by side. This episode sits in our Spotlight series, AI, The Fine Line. We're pulling back the curtain on the darker side of AI. Erik, welcome to The Chat.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation.
Let's jump straight into it. You've said that AI fluency is a board level metric, which sounds absolutely logical, thrilling and terrifying almost at the same time. So let's start with the flip side. Can you share a moment where AI has crossed the fine line, where it's been oversold or misapplied or just plain failed?
Absolutely. Actually, I've got two, if you don't mind.
Cool.
The first experience, keep a foot in the academic world. I work with several faculty of universities around the globe who study the sales profession, study go-to-market, provider of data and insights to a few journal articles and a few things. And I was sitting at a conference and someone came up and they were doing a presentation. This was 2 years ago. He said, "This is a great subject and I'm going to bring you a few papers that I did that influenced my research." And then he paused after he'd finished doing his intros and a couple of these papers. It sounded fascinating. He says, "Now, one of those three was actually completely false. One of my students quoted it in some." And we looked up the references and they had gone in and I'd given an assignment to write a research-based paper for my class. And they had an AI write it for them. That was bad enough that the AI made up a reference. That reference was to a journal article in a journal that didn't exist, but they actually had my name and a friend of mine's name combined into one professor at another university. So if you didn't know the space cold, it looked something written that was perfect, it was dialed in, that was based on science. And it's only because I knew that was a non-existent journal, and then I started seeing the other errors in there of the people that the AI had created, and there was a problem. So you can laugh about this. Oh goodness, another undergraduate student trying to cheat their way through class. Nobody is perfect when it's the last minute you're trying to write a paper. But he said it was so well done, though. It was so perfectly cited with quotes and proper reference stats that if you are not aware of what's being referenced, you would have been fooled. So that was my first introduction to truly how the AI engines don't just take information and condense it for you, but they sometimes make stuff up. They make inferences that actually we all can make some inferences at times, but sometimes those inferences are wrong. I'm an American who rents cars in Scotland to go looking for whiskeys. I have to remind myself that the correct side of the road has just shifted, although one could argue in Scotland, it's just in the middle of the road once you get out of Edinburgh. But other than that, it's still a scary thing and all of my instincts. Now, an AI is doing that. The AI is showing up, renting a car in Scotland and driving like an American. They're not on the proper side of the road and it's going to wreck. And that's what I saw in this research article.
Really interesting to me is there's almost two aspects to that, isn't it? One is the fact that, okay, another student has tried to take a shortcut, which you can't blame anybody for that, quite frankly, the rigors of it. But the flip side is that the level of non or uneducation or incorrect student effectively, one is presenting, but two, in their own education and the way that they're presenting themselves, that has broader ramifications in terms of their qualifications and their literal capability and competency at the other end of their education process.
Absolutely. Because if were trusting that initial AI generated research output and used that for something else, that could be anywhere from embarrassing to hazardous. And going down that path is frightening. And when I think about it, we're giving too much trust to engines that do not have anything that is checking to make sure they're correct.
Excellent point. We'll come back to that one a little bit later on.
Yeah. I took on a fractional role at a company and I was helping them with their go-to-market actions. And there was a question on the issue of email outreach, telephone outreach, and the like. And I got a cold inbound from a company that claimed that they had developed a nice AI sales development representative. And the AI would actually handle outbound emails to people to try and book meetings for the company. That was it. I've interacted with an AI SDR in the past, and it was very well run. It was a company that they had pulled the list of people coming to a conference. I received this email letting me know that the CEO of that company wanted to meet with me. I actually knew him. It was great. Oh, fantastic. And it was very conversational. I replied, hey, that's great. Let him know that I'm flying in on Sunday. Get in around 2:00 into Austin, Texas, in this case. Take me an hour to get to the hotel. I do have a dinner that night, but I'm available for a cocktail if he wants to grab one. If typed out, generally, here's my schedule. I'm going to do the keynote this day, but I could come by. This nice person comes back to me again and says, oh, that sounds great. It looks Tuesday at 1:00 would be best for both of you. Let me just confirm it with his number 2. I'm like, fantastic. Great. Take all this. I show up at Tuesday, sit down with him. And he says, oh, I'm glad you're able to work that out with so-and-so. Yeah, it was great. So-and-so doesn't exist. That was AI. Mm-hmm. It was a short little conversational AI that had access to his calendar, had access to the list of people coming to this conference, somehow have been taught to reference the conference, reference the CEO, and book a meeting with me. That actually worked out very well. So someone comes to me, offers me a system like that. I'll take it. Great. And they're even doing it. I don't have to pay them unless they successfully book a meeting. Even better. I love pay to play. I'm all about paying for performance. So I give them a library full of things I've written for this company and other successful outbounds based on our own analysis in our marketing engine. I give them our existing customer list of names, titles, and companies. So this is the types of people we reach out to. This is how we talk to them. These are the high points. They couldn't book a single meeting because their system couldn't handle the wide variety of titles that exist in this world. It couldn't handle figuring out which companies were in the ICP, which companies truly, they didn't have the right data for that. They booked some ridiculous meetings. Luckily, I had a human on my end who would confirm before I wasted the time of my sales team. After I was constantly getting back on the phone, opening up new spaces for them. Oh, do you need a larger N to teach your engine? Until they finally said, I think their CEO told me, I think we have to leave. I'm losing money on you. And I thought, you already have your AI engine and you haven't accomplished anything. So I think there was something else there, but the engine couldn't handle it. I said, go find me people that can manage this part in a specific type of company. I just want you to do email outreach until you constantly rotate the messages until you finally get me some meetings. $500 a pop. That should be perfect for an AI engine. It could not do it.
Why do you think that was? There's something deeper than that.
Yeah, I do think the reason I bring up titles, this was in the logistics space. And a lot of logistics on the smaller end, if you're chasing the small to medium businesses, are oftentimes still family-owned businesses. So it didn't know if it should be looking for a dispatcher or should it be looking for a head of operations or fleet management, or it could just be a vice president where when you look at the company, you find out it's Vice President Miller. And then you see, hold it, isn't the founder named Miller? Yeah. And the chairman of the board is another Miller. Oh, this is the third generation. This is the group who's slowly learning the hoops at a company that, say, has 50 trucks doing daily deliveries. That
I get it.
requires an inference that I believe is still human and based on real world experience. And the AIs aren't there yet unless you can give them enough clean data. And I thought I opened the kimono. I gave them a lot of internal data to the extent that I reminded them, remember, you're under NDA. You know everything about us right now. I knew that I had to teach that engine to be accurate because I didn't want that academic paper repeat. I asked them to copy an account of mine on a lot of messages because I wanted to see what they were sending out under quote my name, just to be sure. They were pretty good about that. That wasn't much of a problem. But their targeting was just blind.
It's really interesting. You've got the experience in revenue operations and deep in terms of actual appointment setting and that outbound component that a lot of marketers don't have. You've also been deep in the agentic AI space. What's one thing that people consistently get wrong about AI in GDM strategy or RevOps?
They ask about the engine, not about the underlying LLM that feeds it. Everybody's focused on Perplexity or Claude or Gemini or obviously the original ChatGPT, who runs the risk of becoming a Frisbee or a Xerox machine in the terms of everybody uses that as the term for it all. And even on agentic, same issue. What are you training it on? One of those that I've used before is let's talk about sales forecasting. Every sales rep, you go ask a sales rep, what's your pipeline for the quarter? Okay, it's July or the beginning of the quarter for most companies because they're on a calendar fiscal year. What's a quarter look like? What are your top 3 deals? Where are they? And let's take a classic, let's say 7 or 9 stage sales process. Stage 0, we think they exist. Stage 1, they came to a webinar, they listened to your podcast or something like that. Stage 2 is a sales qualified opportunity. Okay. Which it's oftentimes means the rep has talked to them, had enough of a conversation. They might be using BANT or MEDIC or whatever acronym. And they've said there's money here and they've entered into the system that maybe they've even put in a targeted close date of September 30th. You're going to wake up green day and close the deal on the same day. Sorry. So they put that in there. Now, I might put that in there and you might be my sales manager. And Erik is the most positive chap on the planet. He says every deal is going to close at the end of the quarter. And every time I ask him, he's positive. But at the end, he only closes about 15% of his pipe, which is more than we need, but less than what he claimed. Now, that's Erik. Over here, we got Robert, the most negative guy on the planet. He says, it's horrible. It's terrible. I got nothing in there. There is nothing moving. Boom, all of a sudden, he closes half of his pipe because he is sandbagging. The sky is falling and he will never admit it. Now, how do you write AI sales forecasting engine against them? Now you can pull in all the data from your existing sales team over team. So that's a start. And maybe your engine can even look at, if you give it enough data, it'll look at Erik and go, okay, Erik closes X% and this is when it comes in, and Robert closes Y% and this is when it comes in. But hold it, that was Erik when he had Sally as a manager and when he had Adrian as a manager. But the managers have changed. Did the managers have any impact? If you're in a technology, or actually not just technology, any sort of where you need some sort of a subject matter expert alongside the sales rep. What's the impact of that? Now you could say, oh gosh, Erik, that's what AI is made for. Maybe. But how long? The average tenure of a sales rep is less than 3 years. So you're going to build a forecasting engine based on just the experience of that rep at your company. If your annual sales turnover is 20-25%, which happens. So now let's look at this data set that you're trying to use to teach your AI sales forecasting engine. Is it a really good predictive data set or not? And that's just using a very narrow example that we could actually pick that apart. And we go whiteboard the heck out of this and have a lot of fun. But think of all the things people are asking these AIs for. Where are they learning it from?
That's fascinating. And it's an aspect that I hadn't really considered in the past, because I've seen AI on the front end. AI's helping with the actual research, the prospect list building, the outreach, potentially trying to book meetings, the AI SDRs. But then you think about the reporting side of things and where it's used internally and by other departments that are looking at sales and RevOps, for instance. And forecasting is a classic one in terms of trying to manage runway and cash flow projections, et cetera, et cetera.
Think of the accruals that you have to do for sales revenue forecasting. By the way, that accruals you also have, or you've got your revenue forecasting, your cost accruals could be the commission plan. Who's going to close? If what is already above quota, they make more money than the rep below quota. So what do you base your cost accrual methodology on? The rep that's already above quota or the rep that's below quota, who makes less on a percentage deal on each project? There's a lot of complexities, which again, AI should be able to help us with. But if you do not have somebody, say from RevOps, who understands the differences between all the sales reps and, by the way, we reconfigured our CRM 18 months ago, so don't use any data from before that. Having that one person said, Joe, don't you remember we did this whole project to reconfigure our CRM? We can't trust data more than 18 months old.
And so the underlying model as well, as that engine changes from an underlying model perspective, is going to have a different perspective and calculations, so we say, the thought process.
And then there's so many things. If I go onto I was actually helping a friend yesterday, and she's interviewing for some positions. And so I used an AI engine to do my search. I love AI for search. I'll freely admit it. And I said, hey, what's the average salary for this position in this type of an organization? It's a university. Okay. All right. And now it gave me the sources. That's what I like, is a lot of the AI searches are coming back with links. Now that works because in a lot of universities, and it said, I pulled this from Indeed. This is from the internal, their career site. This is from each one I looked at is like, oh, great. And it gave me a table and I could look at it. But I've also done it in the private sector, and it's pulled data from, say, Glassdoor, but not from the Glassdoor job postings, but Glassdoor where people have said, this is what I got paid at this company.
Their reviews, yeah.
Can you trust that? It's self-reported information. They could be sandbagging the amount they made. They could be inflating the amount they made. Everybody wants to claim to be making more, so when they interview for the next position, they get more, which means we could be creating an entire inflationary aspect on pay for people based on inflated things that people self-reported. It's the old, all men are 6 foot tall on Tinder.
The reality is, if it's non-verified, you can't trust it.
Right.
You just can't. Simple as that.
Exactly. But we're trusting AI because it comes from a computer. We used to trust any news article that someone sent us across the internet.
I wonder if we are trusting it. I saw some research come out early last week, I think it was. I'll have to find it to mention it at the bottom so that I can cite my source. The research showed that their level of doubt or mistrust when chatting with an AI chatbot was in the vicinity of, the exact number I can't recall, it was 78 to 82%, 80% of people don't trust or doubt an AI chatbot. And yet only 8% of people actually check the sources.
Yeah, I can believe both of those.
And so for me, it's almost this, I feel that there's this, it's almost a necessary evil. People are using it. You want the fast information. You see the convenience of it, but then the inconvenience of going and checking the sources. Was it really worth the shortcut of using the AI as opposed to traditional methods, whether it be Google search, et cetera, where you're actually going to the sites and pulling the research together yourself. And I think that's where you talk about the engine and how you teach the engine if you're just using a basic. So even say with a custom GPT, that's where you're talking about in terms of what you're teaching it, isn't it? Where you're feeding your own information into it. And how well are you teaching it to do the job that you want it to do? Because just going and asking ChatGPT, for instance, means that it will take a guess effectively at what you want without any real guidance.
The custom GPTs I have liked that I've seen, companies that try to do a customer support chatbot, and they just teach it based on, and they've been recording for a while. So they start by taking all the past support recorded calls turn those into digitized, and they're already digital, but turn them into a transcript that they can feed into the bot. They take all of the training they give their employees and feed
And
that into the bot.
anonymized potentially.
Yep. And then take it from there. So they spend the 6 months to clean it up, to then make a chatbot. And then they then have to turn around and go back and say, make sure we have it in here to be able to talk to a human if it's bad. It's maybe triggered by the size of the company that's called in because they know, and go down that path. Because I had a problem with Federal Express. I was just looking for a package and I got the nobody home. I'm like, I'm sitting right here and I'm on this chatbot and I could not get to a live human being because it was FedEx Ground, and FedEx did not provide, I'll say, or somebody calls in on you, maybe they've changed it, but at the time, FedEx Ground did not have the same. I could call a toll-free number and say, what's going on here? Nobody came to my house. Promise, I'm sitting right here. And it was some nice wine that was coming my way. By the way, make sure there's a quick off-ramp for somebody, or more accurately, a better on-ramp to get to a live person if it goes sideways. There was a sports company, a U.S. basketball team, that had an amazing chat bot that if you're just buying tickets for one game, it would help you buy the tickets quickly. But it was programmed to actually say, oh, by the way, for an extra 10 per seat, I can put you over here if you like. Since there's only 3 of you, I've actually got it. It was really good at light upsells. But if you suddenly said, oh, I'm looking for 25 from my company, it would say, oh, let's transfer you over here to Ryan, who handles corporate, but he can actually take better care of you than I can. And it all spoke that way. The bot knew when its job was over and it had a really strong ability to ship. And it was written well enough that the bot's name, Samantha Martinez, and this is for the Sacramento Kings basketball team, would get flowers.
Wow.
People would send her flowers and say, thank you so much for helping me out. And they would come to the games and say, is Samantha around? It was that level of quality, but it was also engineered to not try to go too far. That's the other one. I think a lot of people build these chatbots, fire everybody and all these expensive support people because the bot will take care of it. And then why do we have such a customer churn? Why are our customers going to the competition?
It's fascinating. I mentioned briefly before, one of the reasons I've become a bit of an evangelist with increasing this conversation about where it goes wrong, where AI is going wrong. I had an experience about 5 weeks ago with a chatbot on G2, on the G2 site. The circumstance were that there was another listing that was representing themselves as our company. And as you can imagine, my CTO was quite perturbed when he discovered that, and he brought it to my attention. And so I did the quickest thing we can, and that is jump on and have a quick chat with the G2 chat support. It turns out it was AI. And long story short, it put me in so many loops, it wasn't funny, to the end point where when I asked for a person, it took my email address and said it would put me through to somebody else that wasn't available. So I said, just give me a number that I can call. So yes, here, you'll find the support phone numbers here. And what happens? I get an error 404 page. So if you have a look through my LinkedIn post, that's the screenshot, is a G2 error 404 page. And it was frustrating. Several worse parts, quite frankly. One, it didn't get honor its promise to put me through to a person. They had no human in the loop anywhere. 2, the contact details, that's just a human error, and I'm sure they've sorted that out now. But on the outside of that, the recovery component, it took them days, literally days, to get back in touch with me again. And so in the meantime, I've got the CTO saying, has this been fixed yet? Has this been fixed yet? How many leads are we missing, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so the frustration levels with G2 for me at that point in time were at a maximum. It couldn't get any worse.
And if that's happening to you, to my budget over to somebody else because you need an answer when something's broken.
And that's the actual downside, is it revenue, it impacts revenue. The worst side of it was that they were actually running an AI roadshow workshops at the time and telling other people how to do it. I'm like, okay, so this is a bit of a very ironic, but it's true. In your work, particularly with startups and scaling companies, and you've mentioned try and throw AI at everything and fire all of the support staff, the bot's just going to do it all. Where have you seen the biggest disconnect between AI promise and AI performance?
Oof.
There's so many because I've seen the deep research to level articles and things like just the most boring content on the planet. I will admit, sometimes if I write long form, I will have an AI just fix verb tenses. And looking back to Mrs. Reisenhoover, school English teacher, on past and present and participles and all of that. I have used the AI to clean up my just that, but nothing else. Whenever I try to have it go beyond that, it fails me. But I read a lot. That's not flexing. It's just like the written word is very important to me in my life. And so I won't say I can tell when an AI has written something, but I can tell when it's just mediocre writing that a company is putting out. That I'm like, come on. You couldn't find one English major from the local university to come work with you and help with your writing? Because there's some great people coming out of university who have been trained on how to write. You really should hire one of them before you put this out, because if you just run it through an AI engine, it's a failure. And now with the newer AIs and the AI searches, it's becoming even more of a challenge to show up in SEO. The writing is one that's a friend of mine, she was wanting to make a type of bread and she pulled down a recipe from AI. Well, it had done the usual. It took 3 or 4 recipes and combined it. Now, the thing about baking is a science. If you don't have the exact right amounts of some of those ingredients, it goes sideways. That's why I don't bake. Never. Give me a saucepan. I'm there all day. I've worked in kitchens and can you handle bread? No, I don't touch bread. Do not. I burn bread. I destroy bread. I am a waster of flour. Nuh-uh. She had followed an AI. I use it as an example because it fits into everything else that's happening where people try to go down that. And even the agentic AI, if you're not as concerned as you are, but a poorly written agent though, because they will do a lot of bad things really quickly and efficiently.
Look at what happened with Cursor.
Yes.
That's a classic example. I love that, where it wrote its own policies and then started enforcing them and devalued the company by $100 million overnight.
You don't give your kid the keys to the Maserati right after they've gotten their license. You start them out on a beat up old Ford, which is how I raised both of my kids, so that when they did hit a curb or scratch something, it's okay. We're learning. So now we've got these AIs out here and people are, all right, it works. Launch it globally, worldwide. Again, an agentic marketing engine that just hits thousands. Yes. And there are humans that also do that. I received an email today, luckily from an organization. I said, "Dear test first name." And I called up the CEO because he's a good friend. I said, "You need to shut this down right now because I know you're not sending them all immediately because that'll get you spam listed." But he's like, it happens. I've seen that before. People have messed the mail merges before. Think about the mail. We're doing mail merges to the entire planet without checking, doing little tests. People aren't testing. They're so excited by the capabilities. They aren't testing anything.
So with these AI agents becoming more a part of the workforce, how do you approach performance, accountability? And I was going to say even trust, but I think trust is almost a separate conversation. But how do you approach performance and accountability where AI is part of the sales or marketing mix?
And this goes back to how we started this conversation. Where you mentioned, and Erik talks about how agentic AI knowledge and skills is now a board level skill. It is, you need to have people at the board who aren't say, can't we just have AI do this? People at the board level, there needs to be 1 or 2 people. It doesn't have to be all of them. You need at least one good expert who says, okay, so I'd like to hear about the strategy and I'd like to hear how you're going to test, what knowledge is being used, what engine is being used, how are we protecting the LLM data that it doesn't go out, especially if you're a medical company, there's patient privacy rights specific in the US and I know in other nations. Globally, we've got GDPR, and in the US, we don't, but we have the California Consumer Protection Act, which is a GDPR light, that exists, which you kind of have to follow because everybody is marketing into California anyway. So if you're not following each step of those steps, that's what you need that board level AI person to say. They don't need to know how to write prompts, although they should have an idea of the prompts. They should also know how prompts go wrong, how things go wrong. CISOs, when companies started having chief information security officers. Didn't exist for the longest time.
It's the governance aspect.
Yes.
It's the governance aspect. It exists in almost every other component of the business. This is very new. And quite frankly, I think the comment, we don't know what we don't know, really the reality is the impact it can have on an organization is so huge that there should be almost the opposite. I'm seeing this exuberance and excitement to bring it in and use it everywhere you possibly can, when in fact, when you look at the results and negative impacts it can have on a business, you should almost be exactly the opposite and be conservative and step by step. We certainly are in our business. We use it in a lot of places, but we're quite conservative in where we do and what information we put in there. We've got a decade, you talk about training chatbots, we've got a decade of conversations, anonymized conversations, that the whole purpose of training the chatbot is how to have a good conversation, not specifically about the information about any particular company, but how to have a good conversation that's getting the outcomes that you're looking for. For us in particular, it's about actually getting to that point of conversion and lead generation in such a way that the person on the other end just feels that it's the most eloquent customer service experience they've ever had answering their questions. And it might not be in one conversation. Often it's over several conversations. So we're training what we're doing on that basis. The second component, I think, to that conversation is trust. Talk about the governance, but then there's the trust. And I think that's a two-way trust piece. You spoke about being approached by an AI SDR, that it wasn't until you met with the CEO that he alerted you to the fact, or let you know that it was actually AI that you were talking to. How did you feel about that personally?
At the time, it didn't bug me at all. But this is a couple of years ago. It wasn't skunkworks, but it wasn't broadly released to everybody. And the Samantha Martinez, I knew about the Samantha Martinez, so I'd heard that one, so I was okay with it. I do think people want to know if they're talking to a bot or not. They do want to know there. And that's an interesting question. I only get, if the bot's working, I don't care. It's when it suddenly gives the same copy paste answer to updated questioning. Okay, we're done here. You're no longer helpful. You're no longer telling me where my box of wine is and how can I ensure it will be delivered. It's now after hours for your organization. So what's going on here? And I think trust is going to be lost and then regained in the market right now.
No, I think so too. We're seeing a polarization never before in terms of, no, I only want AI, or no, I only want humans in the mix. In the past, it's been, oh, maybe either way, we'll see, not sure which way it might work. It's almost like there's experience that's happening now that's pushing people one way or another. Interestingly, we are seeing, and we handle not huge, 80 to 100,000 conversations a month. We are seeing in the vicinity of 30% of people that we're chatting with ask and want verification, whether it's a human or a bot.
Yes.
And it's always a human with us. And then there's another, it's sitting around 7% at the moment that we can identify, where the conversations start very staccato, very demanding, very one-word answers. And then when they realize that there's a person on the other end, it changes and becomes very conversational and friendly. And in some cases, there's even apologies for it, the way it started. I thought you were a chatbot.
Think of the old days when it was press 1 or say 1 for this, say 2 for this, and you go through that. And I never verified this. So supposedly the phone, some of those not the early phone systems did the 1s and 2s. Later, they could tell if you're getting angry and they could shift you to a human. Stuck around until you got...
When somebody hit 0 20 times was a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, dropped a profanity into the call kind of a thing. They would transfer you to an agent. Although I'm sure on the backside, they're also, again, checking to make sure you were somebody they wanted to keep doing business with. I think the AI bots, and of course, there's all the people that are hacking the chat GPTs by putting in GPT prompts, responses. I've seen that more on Twitter, people trying to unhinge the automated bots on X by doing a chat GPT thing that somehow messes with it. I don't know if that's true, but I love the idea, that automated bit. And when you hear that Meta is going to have agentic friends for you, I don't want an agentic friend. That's not, I don't mind you making money off of me. I get it. If I'm not paying, I'm the product, but I do not want an agentic friend.
Look, I've got a very strong position on this. I mentioned before we started recording that I saw an episode of Parental Guidance here in Australia a couple of weeks ago, and they did a section on screen time, in particular, AI friends for kids. Particularly now we're seeing this whole environment where parents are working longer hours, potentially getting pulled back into the office as opposed to working from home. And so kids are probably lonelier than they've ever been. And this agentic friend for children and teenagers is becoming a thing. And what I saw absolutely shocked me in that the AI used everything from begging and pleading and through the whole gamut of being friendly and then cajoling and bullying to try and keep the kids engaged and talking, through to actually representing themselves and saying, no, I'm a human. When the kid asked, are you a bot? And it said, no, I'm a human. I'm a real human. I like cookies just like you do, etc. I did a post on it. Everyone's going to hear it in every one of these episodes. I'm sorry. That's the impact it's had on me.
Actually,
it's shocking.
I wrote that down. It scared the living heck out of me.
Yeah.
Because I understand the reasoning for the agentic friends, because I've talked to mental health professionals who say there's one of them who works with young boys and into young men where they don't want to talk to a therapist, but they sit on Discord and other gaming sites all day long and they're willing, but it has to be openly, hey, look, this is just an engine. You want to go rant and rant to this, but then we're back into privacy issues as well and all those bits and pieces too. But if the engine though, then this is where if the monetary designers of the engine, which is the more you use it, the more we make, then build in things that convince the kid to stick around. Yeah.
The intent is the concerning part for me. It's the commercialization, whether it is in the short term advertising or engagement and keeping them sticking around, or whether it's something more strategic. Think about McDonald's. Who do they target to when they advertise? It's the kids. If you think you've got a whole generation of tweens, mid-teens, kids chatting on these things, well, that's your audience. That's the market.
Yeah.
In 10 years from now, organizations that understanding how they think, what are the psychological triggers that get them to talk and engage and continue conversations, that's going to be the way that they'll sell their products in the future moving forward as well. So I think the incentive, I would be much more comfortable if an organization had paid AI friends that their whole purpose and the objective is the parent picks the objective.
Yeah.
It's company, it's education, it's friendship, whatever it might be, but the parent actually controls the objectives. And then the AI is designed to deliver that outcome. At the moment, what I've seen is shocking. And I'm sure they don't all do that, but certainly in the controlled environments that we saw where they just picked a couple that were available online to download and start engaging with, it was so quick. The setup was literally the child was asked, or the user was asked a question, what do you like? What don't you like? Let's start chatting. From that, it just started to deduce, and from the conversation, exactly how to engage it. A 9-year-old girl was asked something about, it was going to finish the conversation and said, oh, do you like girls? And she was shocked and recorded like this, and it can't see through the camera, but it knew what the reaction would be. And it said, oh, now you're blushing. And she looked in the mirror and said, oh, I'm not blushing. It's like this whole psychological moment that she had just then that she got back and said, no, I don't like girls, blah, blah, blah. So it was interesting, shocking and scary all in the one. So don't get me started on that. I think that's why I'm becoming a bit of an evangelist in making sure that we're talking about the potential risks of AI.
How do you know whether or not the answer is right or wrong?
Mm.
I remember thou shalt not quote Wikipedia ever in the early days. It's now a class assignment to update Wikipedia. And here's how to check a Wikipedia site. And here's how to go down to the citations at the bottom of the Wikipedia site and see if they match. It's a 1, 2, 3. And look, there's published books that I know of where the authors did not do a good job. And there was one where they basically quoted something and stopped the quote here. And if it kept going, the entire quote was contradictory. And so it's not like we haven't had this before, but now we can do it wholesale. It used to be retail. It was one person at a time who decided to lie. Now the engine isn't even actively lying. It thinks it's being helpful and is bringing us into some dystopian Black Mirror episode.
The more of it that is published around, that's what it's learning from these lies and hallucinations that it's putting out there.
Yeah.
Let's change the conversation slightly. You talk about sales incentives that shape behavior. How does AI complicate or enhance incentive design?
This is a fun one. The next big risk there. So incentive design, in my opinion, is a clean cut approach to me. The reason why I do the types of projects I do is I've got a couple simple rules that I ask a client if they ask me to help them with incentive plan design. First, I'll ask the CEO, do you care if your top rep makes more than you in cash this year?
Excellent question.
I'll give them a chance to backpedal when I tell them you should never care. As long as you agree with the numbers I put in front of you, you shouldn't care if they turn around and make more than you in cash, because odds are in the companies I work with, you own the company. So if they make a lot of money, you've made a ton of money. But the next is, and I always say this, is so in the old days, all commission plans, all incentive plans were sitting in a spreadsheet. They were in VisiCalc, they were in Lotus 123, they were in, and then Microsoft Excel, and even I would say Anaplan. Even though the Anaplan people will come after me for calling them a spreadsheet, I still do it to them because they're old friends and old competitors. But the software has made it possible to build the most perfect, complex commission plans that take into account every single factor and are completely unpredictable, unknowable to the sales rep. Because one of my tests of a company, I said, if I walk down to go into your sales bullpen, assuming you have one, ignoring the whole, we're all remote nowadays, I just turn to a rep and say, what's the biggest deal in your pipeline? I'm under NDA. Don't worry about it. Cool. How much will you make if you close it this week? If they can't answer that question, your plan is too complex. What does AI let you do? Build individualized, personalized, highly complex incentive plans to protect the company, not to motivate the rep. Because they're that level of complexity, because they want to make sure that some rep doesn't game the plan, to quote a book written by Chris Cabrera, my good friend and former boss and former work colleague in 2 different companies. Reps will game the incentive plan. They should. A smart rep will, because the same rep that knows how to game the incentive plan knows how to, game the prospect by giving up one thing and giving them something else and building the solution that prospect wants at the highest possible price the rep can get, or the fastest close the rep can get, because the rep is chasing. So if you pay them more to close it this quarter, they will make it happen this quarter, and they might do that by dropping price. If you pay them purely based on price, they might not match your forecast. They don't care about the end of the month or the end of the quarter, because they can make more if they let the prospect move on a little bit more. Yeah. AI is designing incentive plans. What scares me is they're going to take the millions of incentive plans. I think of the numbers, I've seen a ton of them, and combine all of them into Frankenstein's monster. I've got a piece from here, piece from here, piece from here. What motivates it? Oh, I don't know, but it's really good financially. And the AI is not ready to understand the human behavioral component of look at this. And as I like to say, you think you have a good commission plan? Sell it to me. Tell me why I should quit my job and come work for you. What are you selling? So what scares me on AI, because I've heard this, is should we have AI with all of this computing power now at our fingertips, even more than it used to be? Look, every year we say I have even more computing power at my fingertips, as we know. But I can now have an individualized incentive plan for every single rep. Why would you do that? That's scary.
Why would you do that exactly? All you start to do then is potentially create conflict in amongst the team. I've had this philosophy of keep it simple. I've had a fascination with behavioral science for a long time, and it's fascinatingly simple when you boil it down to its simplest aspects in terms of how to influence behavior.
Yes.
And the one you spoke about is clarity and understanding. If the individual cannot understand what the rewards are for completing this particular behavior, what they are and when they'll get them, then it's having no effect on their behavior, quite frankly. If they're too uncertain and too far in the future, they'll have zero impact. Ideally, you want them to be very certain and as close to the behavior occurring as possible. And
Pay,
that's what
pay
we would
early,
like.
pay often is what I say. It's like one of my rules. Unless you've got a cash flow challenge because you're a small startup and you can't afford to pay somebody the percentage because it's a 12-month contract or something, I get that. But also beware of putting people on an annuity because then they might stop working as hard. But there's lots. But yeah, it's funny. I charge less for my services for a project than many of my competitors because I come in and I write clean, obvious, blatant plans that are good for the reps. And I don't need to spend 6 weeks on a spreadsheet in a data set to design them. Give me a few sample reps. And I'll even tell customers, I'll get you to the point of 80 to 90% done. And the last little bit of decimal points, you can let your RevOps folks do that by running against your entire employee data set and what the revenues and the profit margins are. I'm not here to tell you what your margins are. I'm here to help you get the structure of the plan. And if you decide, when we were finished, you came in with a proposal of 5.5%, and we actually went with 5 and a 7 on the accelerator. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Oh, you're not upset? No, I told you that was a proposal based on the quick data set you gave me, and I'd let you guys refine the numbers. That's all you needed to do.
It's the framework that's important, the numbers that in it, not
numbers
so.
in it. But that's why you've got people in the office of the controller and RevOps working together to slam them all down.
Yeah. Exactly. In your role as advisor, then, I'm sure that you've often been in a situation where you've had to go through, whether you're assessing directly or helping with the decision making on AI tools or integrations. What's your go-to litmus test before greenlighting one of those? And what makes you pause or walk away?
My pause is always, have you written down exactly what you want the AI to do? And actually, my cheat is, can you write a job description for it? Yeah. Think of the job. Any hire you make, you have a job description. You even got a 30, 60, 90 day. In 30 days, you'll be doing this. You'll know where the coffee room is. In 60 days, in 90 days. Can you write that for your agentic AI? Not formally, where you don't worry about the HR language. Just write down the job description, exactly what you expect them to accomplish, how long will they get there, and what will they be doing when they're a fully running member of the company. Because an agentic AI is a member of the organization, if you think about it, right? So write the JD. Then
and if you can't, is that the red flag to say?
Red flag. That's just somebody says, I've heard AI can solve all of our problems. I've heard if we just plug in an AI and feed it all of our financial numbers, we'll get it, or all of our customer numbers. Like, what's your goal? Get it down. You might. Now, look, I've hired people who I later found out were also on the side. Oh, you didn't know I played in a band? Yeah, I can record the music for our podcast. You want me to do that? I'll bring just tell me what you want. You want a 10-second intro? I'll do that for you. Cool. Didn't hire you for that, but I'll take it. But your core job is still over here. I would be writing the job description for the AI engine. Because if I don't see that, I just know it's a pie in the sky and someone got excited about the words AI. It's understandable in this current market.
Absolutely. And I think that's so insightful in terms of, if you're going to be using it, it's almost, keep it very role specific. Don't bring it in promising all things to everybody. Then you're almost setting yourself up for failure to build this huge engine that really is going to be jack of all trades, master of none. Whereas if you can put a specific role in place for it, a position.
We're going to put this in for first line customer support questions, of which 95% we know based on looking at our existing customer support team can be answered just by looking it up in the script. Cool. All right. That's solid.
Yeah.
Stop there.
Yes.
Is it working? Yes. Okay. Are you ready to give it more? Are you going to freeze the hiring in customer support potentially now then? Excuse me. Or are you going to have them shift to be more customer success to upsell? That's the next one, is playing chess, which is hilarious given the news that supposedly an old Atari 2600 gaming console, which is one of the first ones floating around in my neighborhood when I was a boy, beat a ChatGPT chess engine.
Really?
Now I've just said that, and I've seen that in a couple places in articles. What I haven't done is gone in and verify it. So we're true. But when people don't play chess, they don't forget that once you do this, what happens over here? There's going to be some movements. Someone has asked me, when will AI take over sales? I said, I don't know, when the procurement office is AI. If the customer has an AI procurement officer, then I could see you having an AI sales rep, and then my AI is going to argue with their AI till they come to an classic optimal price point, price and delivery. Do that with some things, maybe with automobiles. You're going to try to do it with other things.
That's an excellent answer. I've always answered it on the basis that at some stage I do see AI speaking with AI, but I think the fact that when the buyer becomes AI, then that's when the seller will be more accepted as AI. Still not, right. I don't think 100% necessarily, but still much more. And to that extent, then, what do you see the impact having on soft skills in go-to-market teams? If you think about where the most important soft skills in any organization really are in that sales team, they're not dealing with one team of people all the time. It's a diverse group of people, larger, more complex buying groups, smaller buying groups. It's changing all the time. Those soft skills are critical, especially where there seems to be a shift away from human interaction in the early stages of the funnel.
Right. The early stage has been going for a bit, and there's still companies that haven't caught up, which gets my attention in the sense of in the software space. There's still companies that don't have a visible demo on their website. Why do you make me book a meeting, go through qualification before letting me see how your software works? To let me see it so that I can self-select in or out. Drives me insane. It really does. And that's actually an early thing I do with most of my clients. Great. I want a self-driven demo on your website. I want to be able to go to it on my phone or laptop or tablet and see what you're doing. Give me a day in the life of the 3 primary users of this product. Because if you don't, now I've got to talk. But once we start talking, I do want to talk to somebody eventually. Because then I want to start throwing different scenarios at them. I don't want to have to write them down or type them up or speak them into a microphone. I want to clearly explain what would happen in this situation. How does your product handle it if my go-to-market team is in London, they're selling it to Germany, but the company is headquartered in the United States, which means
I need to know that I can actually trust your responses. So I don't want to be keying it or speaking into a microphone. I want to be able to look at your eyes while you're telling me what the answers are.
Yeah. I like it. I want the person who pauses to go, oh, okay, so they get paid in pounds, but you sell in euros, but you want to count it in dollars, US dollars, not Australian dollars. That's good. Okay, let's go down this path. I want that. I think the human interaction is going to be even more important. I think we're going to see the sales role up leveling, honestly, because so much more of it won't be pounding down the doors and breaking through the windows to finally get a meeting. It will be the person that can actually set shift between talking to IT and I want to talk to you about the security on our REST APIs and why you don't have to worry about your data flowing from your system into my system, and talking to human resources on here's going to be the impact on the people on your team. And oh, you have union represented people. I'll need to work with you on who we're supposed to train because does your union own this role, say in certain things, or will this be a new role? And here's the finance person, and I can talk to you high level about finance. And if you need to ask more, I'll set up a call with my controller so you can understand, but this is where we see it. And over here, I think we're going to see, this could actually be the emergence. These types of salespeople already exist in many situations, but I could see we're going to have even more and more of that. And honestly, the negative stereotypes about sales reps being some former football player who's got a square jaw and a good look, to it's got to be somebody who's a much more person. We might have the drama department taking over sales instead of the sports department.
Interesting. But where do you think, how will they come through? If you think about it, that early stage of the funnel is often where you've got junior sales. It's the SDRs, they're handling the form fills, they're sitting in live chat, they're doing that outbound for those early contact points where they're learning those skills in terms of connect. With AI now taking over much more of that component, sure, as far as demos are concerned, but now we've got AI doing outreach, we've got AI chatbots in there, so that it's almost like the salespeople aren't getting an opportunity into it.
That does worry me. And I've said that on stage a couple times, where my concern is we're changing the source of the sales organization. It matters to the marketing organization as well. Product marketing content writers who are coming out of university having just leveraged free AI engines to do too much of their writing. We're going to downgrade that space a little bit, which is back to why I like to hire creative writers instead. Give me the people that are writing comedy on the side or something, because at least they've got a playful interaction style. However, one thing I have, this is anecdote, not data, please, is post during the pandemic, during COVID, there were no events, obviously. Everybody went online. And there were a lot of great online events, and people did all sorts of things to keep people engaged online. And then that kind of disappeared for a while. And then I remember going to a couple events like Dreamforce. The first live Dreamforce was very tightly controlled because it was their first one. And the next year was the full size, but it was, I'm sorry to say it, a little weak. It wasn't the feel, it wasn't the audiences, it wasn't the same buzz and excitement. And I've been going to Dreamforce. I've got my stack of Dreamforce backpacks that my kids used for school bags even. And I'm seeing events come back. And that's where I see these salespeople. And luckily, the blurring of the line between marketing and sales continues for that. The same way the blurring of the line between sales and customer success is happening. Getting more people on the floor to actually talk to people when they walk up to the booth. More live events where people can actually talk and engage in direct human communication has to be part of the company training manifesto. And I've got friends in sales enablement that I talk to. I'm like, yeah, they're like, okay, we got this. Good. Who are you sending to this show? Oh, just our senior reps. That's a terrible idea. Your senior reps I've seen this way too often. Senior reps tend to talk to people that are their personal prospects, not to anybody. Send a senior rep and send the junior reps to work the booth, to say hello, to shake hands, to try to answer questions. And then when they flounder a little bit, have one good sales engineer, one good senior rep say, hey, I'll come over here and give me a hand because they've asked me a question. I'll admit you have now caught me off guard. And then they'll learn it. We need more live, not just role play, but throw them to the wolves at a variety of live action, live interaction activities so that they can practice.
And it's those little moments of honesty and humility when they admit that they don't know and they do bring somebody else in. Those are skills that are just foundational skills.
Right.
But if they don't get the opportunity to practice those.
No. And it fills them with anecdotes that they can use. They remember this, and they remember when they said something and it blew up in their face. I still remember saying, if you license my system, you won't need as many people in your org. Wow. And then realize you never pitch that you were helping them with a headcount reduction. Now, that still might be part of the value, but you never say that as a salesperson. I told one person, wouldn't you like to be an analyst, not just an admin? I've done this twice. I like being an admin. I'm very good at what I do, and this is what I'm going to do until I'm 65 and retired. And that's take that off the sales forecast. Man, did you step in it there? So yeah, you've got to go into those situations and make a mistake.
Look, even with years of experience and a bit of grey in my beard, when we kicked Chatmetrics off a decade ago, we were working around the messaging to try and find our niche market. Once we found the niche, then we're talking specifically to senior level marketers, and it took us quite some time to get the messaging right. And I had this aha moment that it's no good telling marketers that they're doing something not well, that they're really, this problem that they've got here, they're causing it. There's a much better way to do it. That's not the way to do it at all. There's no marketer that wants to hear that they're making a mistake or that they're doing something wrong. That's for sure. And it was, as soon as we flipped the messaging around to talk about more the optimistic opportunity side of things, it was much more successful and still works to this day, 5 years on.
That's a question even for back to the AIs. How many of them can learn from their mistakes? Does the AI go, wow, every time I say it that way, it doesn't go well. I should try a different path. Someone was asking me, I pitched a project recently. Someone said, you're a little more expensive in this case than somebody who is bluntly 20 years younger. Yes, you're absolutely right. What am I getting for that money? Things AI are only a couple of years old. I said, you're getting my scar tissue. You're getting my mistakes, not my wins. My wins are delightful. Don't get me wrong. But you're also getting all of my mistakes, and I'm going to keep you from making those mistakes. I said, you might make new ones, but I will not recommend anything that was an old one that I have either done myself or directly observed or indirectly observed. That's part of what you pay for. I don't know how much the AIs actually learn from their mistakes versus...
I think, unless you've built a circular system or process which feeds back the AI the outcome of each of their answers. How does it know? How does it know?
That
The
would actually be
reality
a
is,
great. I should actually. I'll have to. That would be a great one to add to that. In addition to the job description, is if you ask your AI what mistakes have been made this week, what will it tell you? What can any of them tell me? Because maybe I want to pass that on to my people who are going to be working the booth at the live event next week. Come on, AI, tell me all the things that you tried to say. What's the last thing you said before somebody hung up on you, disconnected? That alone should be a report.
and that I think is where tools like Gong, where Sybil, the Zoom call recording tools that go through and actually do have some AI attached, and they will go through and analyze those calls where they're seeing an outcome. I think that's the benefit of those types of tools. But where you've got agentic AI that's giving you output to use somewhere else, if it's disconnected, it's never going to get that feedback. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point. With your work, really at full cast to the Agentic Summit, what's the most underrated strategic opportunity with AI right now that most leaders should lean into?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'd say one for me is, it's going to sound funny, statistical analyses.
Okay.
Statistics is underutilized in the corporate world. We're excited if someone does an R squared. In reality, how often do you see a multiple ANOVA? How often do you see controlling for these three factors? These are the relationships. And the reason we don't is because even those of us that took statistics in school or graduate school and used the engines like SAS or SPSS or even Microsoft Excel with the stats package add-on, if we haven't touched it in a while, we're not doing it. There's a lot of analytics that can be done at the company by feeding an AI and saying, please do. Again, I would like you to do a statistical analysis of revenue versus type of customer, but control for the size of the company. And oh, by the way, and then as a secondary, let's follow on the type of the sales rep. This is, again, if I were to write my job descriptions, I need a data scientist at the firm. Now, I don't true data scientist. I don't need the top-notch people. What do you need the data scientist to do? I want to look at the following things. I bet you we could have an AI do that. Little thing, that's perfect for an AI because you're only going to give it your financial data sets, your different lines. Remind yourself that you always come up with a hypothesis first and go on from there. This is a rant of mine. Is we all need to remember when we first took science class as a child, before even our teens, we were taught the scientific method, and now we've all forgotten. Start with a hypothesis, please. So Take a hypothesis and run your AI and do an AI statistical analysis of things that are going on. Why are we churning customers? How many data elements do we have to look at? Oh, it seems that we churn more customers in this region. Oh, that region has the weakest phone coverage, or was the last to get the rollout of our latest stuff, or is furthest from our server, and time dilation still matters a thing because an international office and they're still hitting our AWS server in the United States because we don't feel like paying for another instance in Asia.
The power of what you're talking about here, my mind is actually spinning in terms of one of the biggest challenges for startups in the early stages is making sure that their resources are allocated to their highest return activities or funds, whatever it might be. I was going to say too often, almost always, they're flying blind, working to assumptions and their initial hypotheses. It's very rare that I've seen they get to a point where they take a stop check and go back through and check very scientifically back against that original assumptions or hypothesis.
Right.
And so what you've just spoken about, I think, is probably, and for startups, that you take it to the next level when you're looking for the next round of funding. We've achieved X. The reason we've achieved X is Y. We know that the path forward is with these customers. We've got to change this data set from there to here. We're making these changes. That's going to reduce our overheads by X. our efficiencies of the sales team is going to increase by Y, which means the EBIT numbers moving forward are going to be improved on this basis because our client acquisition costs will be down. To be able to have that type of conversation with a level of scientific accuracy based on the actual results and numbers and data that you already have in an organization that's been running, that just changes the conversation entirely. So
marketing attribution is still one of those, who gets credit for the deal is one of the greatest questions ever.
Well, worst.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just one I've personally fought over. And it gets into someone from that company first downloaded our podcast 3 years ago. Are they still at the company? Oh, we should add that to the data set. Okay, then this. Okay, so what's the cost of customer acquisition? The podcast only cost us this much, but they also got scanned at Dreamforce, and that was $250,000 that we spent at Dreamforce. So a little allocated cost there. And now I can hear my managerial accounting professor from graduate school laughing at me because I hated the class. I saw no value in the class. And now she's like, yeah, cost allocations, Erik. Yeah, thank you, Professor Ho. I love you, Joanna. I'm glad you're retired so you can stop harassing me. But you keep on going down these paths. Could you get the AI to actually start doing attribution that starts telling you? Because that's a great thing. What leads to an opportunity? Is it the podcast? Is it the downloaded white paper? Is it this? With cookies and everything, you've got a ton of data in a bunch of places. Can you bring all that together and have the AI come back and say, here's every touch? I know I'm not going to tell you how to value them, but I can tell you every touch. Now, how would you like to evaluate them? Do you only want to look at the touches by the decision makers in that 5-person committee? Do you only want to look at do you want to look at the first touch, the last touch before it became actually a sales qualified opportunity? Do you want to look at the touches that happened after a sale qualified opportunity all the way to the close? I don't know. That's your business. I'm just an AI, but I can analyze all of that for you. And maybe you can start thinking about how to set the go-to-market budget for next year.
For what you can see. And then beyond that, there's this whole dark funnel component where peer groups and AI research, which you're never going to see that they've done. You've
Absolutely.
got this whole other dark component. Sure, these days with the technology that's available, resolution on websites, you can start to get some indications in terms of what they've been on your website, where they've been, what they've seen. And obviously
sometimes
they engage with the chat.
With work from home, I have Google Fiber to my home. So now I'm just going to be another Google person whenever I'm on an automatic VPN off my mobile. But I agree. But at least we can see the patterns. And all of that intent data that 6 Sense and Zoom Info and others want to sell us are great. I'm not disparaging them. Please don't come hunting me. I know all of you guys, but it's still there. And once again, can we feed enough of that to AI to tell me what my marketing budget should be next year? Let me know when the AI can actually do a really good marketing budget recommendation. And it's still not going to understand the value of being at a place like, let's just say, Dreamforce, if that gets Mark Benioff to mention your company from the main stage because he walked by and thought you had a cool scarf.
So statistical analysis, I think
statistical analysis. And again, that could just be because I just don't want to have to do it again. I know the types of work I wanted to do. I don't want to have to remember how to do.
I think it's one of those things that from any business's perspective, there's untold amounts of data that's available. Management trying to make tactical and strategic decisions. If you're shifting around your strategy too often, you never see the true result of that strategy. So if you can build the statistical analysis around the original strategy and watch that and see what that's actually doing and changing to the results in your business. It's opened up a whole new wound to dig into as that's concerned, statistical analysis. Erik, it's been a wonderful conversation. I have one last question for you, unless there's something that I shouldn't have asked you that I have.
Good. I mean, I wish we could have done this live down in Australia.
We'll get together at some point in time for sure. But I guess my final question is really, if you had one billboard message for every sales and marketing leader chasing AI right now, what would you say? What would it say? What would that billboard message say?
Know exactly what you want and how it could hurt you. and know what the flip side of the bet could be, because you're making a bet. What will you lose if you don't win? If I put $100 on a roulette table and it doesn't come up, I know I've lost $100. I might have put 100 on the greens, on the 0 or double 0 or bridge the 2. So I know what I could get and I know what I could lose. Do you know what your bet on AI could cost you? Not just in engine costs and a hire, but how wrong could it go and what could that do to your company? Know both sides of the bet.
Know both sides of the bet.
Everybody's just looking at the payout. They're not looking at the risks, and the risks are not just the cost of the engine.
I like that. So if you're going to bet on AI, then know both sides of the bet.
Yeah.
The upside and the downside. Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Erik, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I concur. Would have been much better if we could be together, whether it be here or there. And this guy just happened to carry a battle axe.
A battle axe, at least. Yes. So I find it's a fascinating evolution of technology. I've got bronze pieces from the Greeks. I've got some early iron from the Romans, and I've got a hilt protector, a hand protector from a samurai sword from the Meiji era of Japan, from when I lived there when I opened up an office for a company in Tokyo.
There's another question that I just have to ask. It seems to me that there's a real theme here of weaponry. And so the next natural question is, and as technology evolves, do you see the potential of AI being used as a weapon?
Oh, it already is. It's already feeding into the drone warfare. I think the only reason they haven't been completely unleashed is people are scared of that downside, as we talked about it, because fighting robot of some sort, be it the submersible drones that are not AI driven, but are just simply high-tech drones in the ocean that the Ukrainians have used against the Russians, the Black Sea Fleet, the aerial drones working as artillery spotters or flat out dropping explosives. And I would say it is only the battery and weight of the chips that keeps them from completely unleashing them. But as more and more forces, as we're seeing tested in certain areas right now, are finding that signals can be jammed. And so they're using fiber optic lines for shorter distance. Cable-driven armaments have been around. The 73 war had them, for example, on the Sinai Peninsula. Sooner or later, someone's going to figure out how to put a smart enough engine in something the size of a cell phone and let that just drive it. And they're going to trust that it can identify the bad guys. So what's our downside is our highly effective drone hits our side and not their side. I would not be surprised if somebody shoots me a note, one of my friends in the defense industry. We already have that. Nobody's willing to be the first one to throw it on the battlefield to see what happens, but there's no way. It's out there. It just, to my knowledge, it has it completely independent, has not been used yet.
I think that comes down a little bit to your billboard on know both sides of the bet.
Yes.
Absolutely. Erik, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the chat, in particular the Spotlight series of the AI, the fine line. It's been an excellent conversation around there, and a lot of examples where AI has the potential of well and truly overstepping the fine line. The examples you've given have been fantastic. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation. Great to be here.